Thank you, Representative Degette, for being here. My name is Alex Rubin. I'm the Business Director with Denver chapter of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws.
Okay.
My question is relating to the ongoing conflict between state and federal marijuana laws. Regarding the marijuana being federally illegal, 29 states currently permit either the medical or adult use of distribution of marijuana. As my representative, what can you do to protect the rights of individuals in states that have expanded access to marijuana?
I thought it was more than that now. I thought it was over 30 that have either done individual use or...
I think it's at 29.
Okay, well, in any event, so after Colorado passed our initiative, you might be aware of this, I introduced legislation to exempt states that had legalized marijuana from the preemption clause of the Federal Controlled Substances Act.
Well, I believe that the co-sponsor or the bill that HR 975. It's the respect state marijuana laws, which would prevent the federal government from criminally prosecuting individuals.
Do you know what our bill number is? I don't know what the number is. Is that it? Okay, so the way my bill works, so I introduced this like the next week after we passed our initiative, because I felt like it was my job to, my constituent had spoken, the state electorate had spoken, and I felt like it was my job to make their desires protected under federal law. So what my bill would do is, marijuana is a Schedule I controlled substance under the Federal Controlled Substances Act, the highest, it shouldn't be, the highest classification that there is. And so what that does is people in the marijuana business can't get bank accounts for federally insured banks. People can't get, they can't get the tax relief that other businesses should be able to get. And there's this continuing vague threat of enforcement by the DEA and the federal officials. So what my bill does, I feel like it's really elegant. It goes in, there's a clause in the act that says, this law shall preempt state law. And so my bill says, except where a state has legalized marijuana. So it's a states' rights bill. I got a lot of Republicans to co-sponsor that bill because it was states' rights. And I've been, thank you, and I've been trying to pass it ever since. I will tell you, I think that certainly the opinion of the citizens is changing on marijuana. And I think that therefore the opinion of their elected officials is beginning to change. Because when I first introduced this bill, I would go up to my colleagues on the floor and go, I've got this bill, it's around marijuana and it's about states' rights, and they would literally turn and walk away from me. Now, they're, what are you going to do? So I've been working on this issue for a long time. Ed Perlmutter, who represents the 7th Congressional District, he has a bill, he's on the Financial Services Committee. He has a bill to allow banking, and so I'm co-sponsoring that bill, and there's a number of other bills as well. I will say that there's some movement, and the Trump administration has said that they might be willing to reclassify marijuana. I'm dubious about that, because I think even reclassifying marijuana as a lower schedule still would preclude the banking and everything else. So I don't like that. And I think that it's optimistic to think that Congress is going to totally move to remove marijuana from the Controlled Substances Act. But I'm very worried about what Sessions is going to do and what the DEA is going to do. I had a meeting with the DEA, the head of the DEA. It was interesting because I was meeting with the head of the DEA and a senior Republican legislator from Oregon. And we were like pounding him, what are you guys going to do? And we did finally get him to admit that they weren't going to make this their top. They have to like go after real criminals, right?
Yeah.
But this is a continuing issue that we're concerned about. And the U.S. Congress, like we were talking about climate change here, I work in the last institution where we actually had a hearing in my committee last year about how climate change is a hoax. It's like the only people who still believe this are the Republicans in the U.S. Congress. Same thing with marijuana. We actually had to have a debate a couple years ago about should we allow commercial sale of hemp.
But they really
For real? Yeah. And the next week I went over to Whole Foods and they had a whole display in the front of hemp products. Yeah.
Representative Degette, thank you for being with us tonight and for your work in Congress thus far. My question is related to Americans' veterans and their access to medical marijuana. Right now, veterans are increasingly turning to marijuana and as effective alternative to opioids and other conventional medications, but VA doctors are forbidden from providing the paperwork necessary to complete a recommendation, so veterans are forced to suffer or rely on opiates. So as my representative, what can you do to provide some relief to those who have sacrificed so much for our country?
Well, I mean, again, I think veterans should be able to get that same access to medical marijuana. And I think if we passed my bill, that would really help. But it's a continuing problem.
There's a bill, the Veterans Equal Access Act.
But let's take a look at the Veterans Equal Access Act.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let's get over here. Yes, right here.